We talked about Iran, Iranians, and Persians. I would be committing podcasting malpractice if I didn't ask you about the Persian New Year that's just coming up in a few days. So, as a point of interest, first, what year is it? That itself is a point of contention sometimes. It brings up a lot of interesting stuff. And two, when did it start? The Persian New Year, the celebration.
Oh, see, there, I would say don't call it the Persian New Year.
Okay, go ahead.
I would say the Iranian New Year.
Interesting.
Because there, if in the modern sense, we're considering Iran this wider terminology, that doesn't have to do with the country necessarily, but rather with the entire cultural extent. The celebration is actually celebrated in many parts of the world outside the borders of Iran, and it certainly is not Persian in the sense of it has never been connected necessarily to the Persian rituals in the sense of the specific southern Persia, I mean in the sense of Fars.
Yeah. The province.
The rituals they're doing are very widespread. It's the year 1402 based on the Hijra calendar.
The Islamic calendar.
The Islamic calendar. I don't have a problem with it because in general, the way we counted years was based on the years of the rule of the kings, right? So before Islam, you don't really have a continuous calendar. You have the year 32 of Khosrow II. Right, that's how things are counted. A bit like the Chinese.
And then it would start again with the next monarch.
Exactly, and the last year of this monarch would be the first year of that monarch. The Chinese have the same thing. They have eras. So it's year 3 of the era of Gaozang of the Tang Empire. That's how they counted this. There was a calendar. There was an ancient calendar was used, but you would be surprised. It was the Seleucid calendar. It was a calendar that was established by the Seleucus I, the Diadochoi sort of ruler that replaced Alexander in Iran.
The Greek rulers.
They use that for certain type of timekeeping. But the regular daily calendar was based on the king's day. There is another one based on a king's rule, and that's the Yazgirdi calendar, which essentially is 10 years behind the Hijri, the solar Hijri calendar. So in Yazgirdi calendar, it would be 1392 now. But I'm just okay with the Iranian calendar because it goes to the medieval period. It is a solar calendar, and the beginning of it starts with the Hijra of Muhammad, which majority of Iranians are Muslims, so why not? I don't see a problem with it.
You mentioned solar. Why is it that the Iranian calendar is on a solar system, and when you look around that region, to the east and west, most other calendars are based on a lunar system?
It's a really good question about why, because the Chinese use lunar, the Jews use lunar, and the Arabs use lunar as well. I don't really know. In the ancient period, both were used simultaneously for different purposes. Solar calendar is obviously coming from Babylonia, ancient Babylonia. Okay. They use this. So the whole setting of the solar calendar is really an ancient Babylonian thing. And it was always used. I don't really have a very good reason. What we know as the Zoroastrian calendar, how ancient it is and when exactly they came up with it, I don't really have a very clear opinion on that. But that's also solar. But lunar was used simultaneously. So lunar calendar wasn't unknown. Somehow the way we have it now, which is happening really in the 11th, 12th century, is for the organization of agriculture and for tax purposes. It's because the biggest thing about the area that Iran and the area around it is the agriculture and the control of water and growing of things.
You mean when you say the way we have it now, you mean the solar system?
The solar system.
Yeah.
Okay. So the solar system is a lot more useful for agricultural activity. At least in the 11th, 12th century, when they're setting it up, That's mostly the reason. But I really don't know why necessarily lunars didn't take on as much. For most of Iranian history after Islam, it did, after all,
They
until
used to.
1906. That's what we were using anyway. So we reintroduced it. But
The
just solar calendar has a longer history within the Iranian world, I guess.
Interesting. Before we go to the next segment, I just wanted a quick clarification on something. We've used the word ancient, and there's the term antiquity.
Yeah.
They're not interchangeable. They mean different eras. Do I have that correctly?
No, not necessarily. We are talking about the same thing.
We are?
There is a problem. Both of these terms are really created for European history. Terms such as ancient or antique, and then now late antique, which is becoming common, and medieval and pre-modern and early modern and modern. These are really for European history, set up to describe really what 19th century Europeans saw as their ancient or antiquity, which is Greece and Rome, medieval Europe, and then modern. It doesn't necessarily fit everywhere. We just conventionally use it. We just tend to think of everything before 600 BC as ancient, antique, and then medieval, and then modern. But yeah, they are largely interchangeable.
Interesting. We'll be back after a short break to talk about a second Persian empire, one that changed world history in a significant and lasting way. We'll be right back.